Regardless of how we are all different, how we all need each other, there is a sense of commonality that our 10% cannot not see. And that reality is that we all strive to get to that same place in our mind. We are all striving for the same destination. Sure, some of us might take different roads, might have different names, might go about different paths, trying to get there, but ultimately we're all striving to get to the same place. And there is no reason why there cannot be certain things that unite us that could help us in cohesiveness try to get there. And the things that we separate ourselves over. The most common ones is, and it's gotten better, but language is one of them. For instance, I'm French, and that's alright. Nothing wrong with that. But in the grand scheme of things, if I go back, if I'm going to take pride in that lineage that I'm French, then why shouldn't I not go back in time, in history, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, when French, there was no such thing as French, it was Spanish, because French originated from Spanish. And then who knows, maybe 5,000, 10,000 years prior to that, Spanish originated from something else. Or why should I take pride? Some people take pride in race. Yeah, whatever, that's fine. But here's the grand scheme. In the grand scheme of it all, let's say I'm white. As far as science is uncovering, 10, 15,000 years ago, people that would have been the whitest people would have had a much darker pigmentation of skin color than they do now. If archaeology is correct, and you go back in history, we're 7 billion people now, right? It wasn't that long ago we were 6 billion people, and prior to that, maybe 30 years prior to that, we were 5 billion people. And you go down to the analogs of history, since they keep on keeping, the population increases. So at some point, if the population extracts in time, then that means there must have been a beginning point for all of us. So if some of us are going to, take pride in lineage that we're either one thing or another because of ancestry from 1,000, 2,000 years ago, why not the ancestry that began it all? Why should we not take an element of pride of that and just realize what we are in the grand scheme of things is human beings who can only use so much of their capacity, who all have gifts, who all want to get to the same place? Really, in the grand scheme of things, is noticing these things really beneficial to us? Would myself being saying that I'm a French, white, put a tad bit of native, but obviously look at me and most people would throw the presumption I'm white, and I'm okay with that. I don't care one way or the other. That if people would say one thing or not about me, it's pointless. Why should I take pride in that? It just means that I'm different than someone else. And if I develop a status quo in my mind as to what I should be proud about in that status quo, then that means from that status quo, from that perception, I'm going to see people differently than myself. When in the grand scheme of reality and existence, they're not different. They have the same ancestry I do. They came from the same place I did. Their ancestry had the same language, and when they existed and all that, I'm sure they did not care what religion they were. I'm sure they didn't really realize or care what pigmentation of skin color they were, and I'm sure as certain they didn't care what language they were. If we're going to take pride in lineage and all that, then we should take pride in the reality that people that we deem to be different ourselves ultimately come from the same place we do.